the independent body that do the assessment. This shows the economic growth in Fiji. This only happened for the second time in Fiji's post-independent history. That for 7 years, we've had economic growth. You can see these lines when they go up this way, that means that we are growing. The line is below this way, that means we are not growing. We are actually going into negative growth. Normally you get this when you have a cyclone. Normally you know when you have a cyclone, a lot of things get damaged, crops get damaged, buildings get damaged, so your productivity, your economic growth gets reduced or goes into negative growth. You can see the cyclone Winston here, because of that, they were growing very well, it went down to 2%. So even though cyclone Winston caused us about $1.4 billion US dollars worth of damage, 1.4 billion US, which is approximately 300 million Fijian dollars. That's the extent of the damage. So even though that damage took place, we still grew at 2%, growing 2%. We expect the economy to grow at least for the next 3 to 4 years, on the average of about 3%, which is good news, because when the economy grows, that means that people are spending money, they're buying things, it also creates jobs. Today in Fiji, nearly 70%, 69.4% of the population is below the age of 40. All of us in the minority, they're in the majority. So obviously we need to create opportunities when we get them. The economy must grow very quickly. What are the things that contribute to the growth? There are different sectors. So you have agriculture. Agriculture contributes 0.31%. But if you look at fisheries and forestry, it's very low. Fisheries only contribute 0.02%. Fisheries is only, forestry is only 0.01, very low. So that means that in these areas there's opportunities to grow, but it also means there are some issues there which we have to address. Because we do have a lot of natural resources. On the other hand, we think that agriculture obviously can contribute a lot more. In Fiji, as you know, those of you who lease land, we have 3 types of land in Fiji. Utopia lease, crown lease or state land, and freeholding. Normally when we have been leasing out land for agriculture, the leases have only been for 50 years. But if you go and say, for example, before, if I lease Utopia land for agricultural purposes, I get a 50-year lease. But if I was leasing Utopia land for tourism, I get a 99-year lease. So a person who wants to build a hotel can go and use that lease, give to the bank as mortgage, get some money, build a hotel. But if you take the 50-year lease to the bank is not going to give you the money, it's too short. This is why in Fiji today, agriculture is very basic. You don't see any new technology in agriculture. You go to other countries, for farming purposes, they have a lot of new technology. So because people don't have enough money in the agriculture sector to invest. So now, of course, the law allows the Utopia and crown land and even freehold land to be leased for agricultural purposes up to 99 years, which will be helpful. In the manufacturing sector, in the industry sector, manufacturing contributes 0.5%, quite a lot. We actually manufacture a lot of things in Fiji now. We manufacture sewage pipes, water pipes, we make biscuits, we make soap, we make flour, all sorts of things we make. We sew garments. That's growing. Sugar production, though, is included here too. Construction contributes a lot, 0.33%, but I will suggest to you that this is even higher now. These figures, ladies and gentlemen, is as at October 2016. And remember, in 2016, in February, we had Winston. So it had affected a lot of things too. But I will suggest to you that this, if we look at these figures this year, construction will be a lot higher. There's a lot of construction going on in Fiji at the moment, particularly after cyclone Winston. The construction is good, we like construction. When you want to put up a building, you need somebody to come and dig the foundation, you need to lay the steel, somebody to pour the concrete, somebody to break the walls, somebody to lay the bricks, somebody to do the plaster, do the electrical works. So it needs a lot of spend money, you pay back. You spend money, the shopkeeper say, oh, I'm really busy, I need to hire another 2 people to help me. So it also creates jobs. That's why construction is important. Mining is 0.04, electricity, water is about 0.1%. Services sector, financial services, because as you know, our Honorable Prime Minister, and we always talk about how we need to grow our Fiji is the hub of the Pacific. So because of the fact that we are a hub, a lot more flights coming to Fiji. People use Fiji for financial services. You see the transport sector contributes about 0.37. We have a lot of potential in the services sector, in particular in the ICT area. You know, call centers, track and processing and all of that. Next one, please. What are the things that the Reserve Bank of Fiji looked at to say the economy is growing? The value of building permits issued between January and September 2016 went up by 12.7%. In other words, people are making applications to put up new buildings. So you look at that, that means more people will construct. Value of work per place, this is actual construction taking place. Domestic cement sales went up by 11.1%. You don't buy cement to keep it under the house, you buy cement to build. That goes to show that people are investing. Imports of investment goods, this is basically buying machinery, those types of things from overseas. So obviously, the companies are buying machinery and all those types of equipment that's going to help them fix it, and means also the economy is growing. CapEx means capital expenditure. Government CapEx went up by 7.8%. In other words, we have increased our allocation for building. When we build a road, when we build a bridge, we hire people, we buy gravel, we pay royalties to landowners to get the gravel, so that means more money is going within the economy. These are the areas that actually decrease, that we invest in lending for real estate, lending for building construction. Consumption indicators. The number of new vehicles registered went up by 27.5%. The number of second-hand vehicles registered went up by 7.8%. You can see a lot more cars in Fiji now. A lot more cars. Sometimes you travel in the morning from Nassau to Suva, it can take you over 1 hour, 1 hour and 20 minutes. Why? Because a lot more cars on the road. The people in Fiji, when they do well, they want to buy a car. So the first thing they want to do. If you do well, people don't take the bus to go by car. Because, oh, my son and daughter is doing well, they want their own car. It's seen as a sign of social mobility. New lending to wholesale retail trade went up 32%. Imports of consumption goods. We buy a lot of things from overseas. Everything we have is from overseas. The gentleman here has got the glasses, the sticks. The frames are not made in Fiji. The glasses are made in Fiji. The watch is wearing is not made in Fiji. The shirt is wearing may be sold in Fiji, but the top comes from overseas. The steel here in this chair is not made in Fiji. They may bend it in Fiji, but the steel is made overseas. The screws, they're not made in Fiji. The stars, they're not made in Fiji. Everything, almost everything comes from overseas. Yes, these louvers, the glass is made in Fiji now. It makes all those things. The Spanish come from overseas. So, when you see an import of those consumption goods going up, you know that people are spending money, a lot more things are being imported. But there's another impact of that, and I'll tell you later on. PAYE, that's pay as you earn, tax. When you work, you pay tax. If you earn more than $16,000, you pay tax. So if that has gone up, that means more people are working, that's why we're collecting more, or people's salaries have gone up. New job advertisements went up by 15.1%. Personal remittances. This is, people who work overseas, Fijians working overseas. We have Fijian players playing rugby. We have Fijians working as security guards in the Middle East. We have people in West Coast of North America working as caregivers to elderly people. We have nurses working overseas. We have friends and relatives living in Australia and New Zealand. When they all send money back home, that's what you call personal remittances. That's our second largest foreign earner after tourism. That went up by 5%. The collection of VAT went up also. New lending to private individuals increased by new lending to private individuals went down by 4.7%. Now this is the vehicle registration I was talking about. You can see in 2004 there were 6,088 second-hand vehicles registered in that year. Look at by comparison, in 2016, 10,000 vehicles were registered. Second-hand vehicles. 2005, 3,363 new vehicles registered. 2016, nearly 5,000 registered. Huge difference. You can see there's a huge uptake over here because we reduced duty on hybrid cars, zero rate of duty. We also said any vehicles less than 2,500 cc, we will reduce the duty. But if you are rich and you drive a BMW 3,000 cc, you have to pay additional 30% duty, excise duty plus $20,000 on top of that. So you want to charge the rich person more duty, the poor guy or low income person, you pay less duty or no duty at all. That's how we gain our revenue, but also make it easier for the low income families. Retail sales, this basically measures, when you go to the shop, when you buy things, so they measure how much sales is going on. As you can see, it's been increasing every year. Average growth is 7.1%. Please stop me if I'm going too fast. Now this measures inflation. Inflation is, the price of goods. You can see for the past few years, the inflation has been, this is the percentage, has been less than 2%, which slightly went up over here. But you can see after midterm, the prices went up. Normally this is what happens. Yamona is still today in the Western Division, $110 a kilo. It's after midterm. It used to be what, $40? Now $110 a kilo. So obviously they will make things expensive, but some people even though it's $110, they still treat it at the same rate. Like the bundle of beans, long beans. The mixer is like $5. The place is $7. Sugar, my son loves bananas. If I this much one small bunch of bananas and sugar out of the mixer, it costs $20. You have to find it. Now it's about $5. There's more banana trees and so normally this what happens after a cyclone. The price of goods go up, but as you can see it's coming back down now. It's about 4.1%. It's the effect of a cyclone. That's why we don't like cyclones. Cyclones kill people, cause a lot of stress, cause a lot of money, a lot of damage. Foreign reserves. You know how I mentioned before that a lot of these things come from overseas. This recorder comes from overseas. This camera this young man is using comes from overseas. The sunglasses come from overseas. So when you buy these things from overseas, they don't sell it to you in dollars. Sell it to Japanese yen, US dollars, Australian dollars, New Zealand dollars, Singapore dollars. So we have to have also foreign reserves to be able to trade. So international benchmark, all the international banks, etc. will tell you. See this line here, the dotted line. And that's how much foreign reserves you should have. It's like a comfortable position. This is the number of months. That's the value. So we should have at least 4 months of foreign reserves to be in a comfortable position. See the difference. In 2005, we had only $549 million in foreign reserves. Today, we have $2.1 billion. Huge difference. So we are, as far as foreign reserves are concerned, a lot richer. So when overseas banks, overseas countries look at you, if your foreign reserves are higher, then they say, okay, the country is doing well. So when you also borrow money, the interest rate can also be lower. Like Fiji Airways, they bought 3 brand new aircraft. The funding cost hundreds of millions of dollars just to buy one plane. So when they go and borrow money from European banks, these are some of the things the European banks look at. So they look at, okay, if foreign reserves is good, that means they can do their repayments. foreign reserves are low, so it will be difficulty, then you charge them high interest rate. That's how you get low interest rate also. So that is a good sign, it's a healthy sign. Now, fiscal deficit. Right from the Ranapara government days, from independent time, every single government in Fiji runs a what we call a fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit means that we spend more every year than we actually have. We are a developing country. We are a colonial country, ex-colonial country. You see, most countries in the world that are ruled by another country, the infrastructure development is very little. You'll see wherever the colonial power stayed, they had water and electricity. Go wherever the local village, they don't have water and electricity. If they have enough population, they have 3 or something that still have it. Villages around there, people living around there, they don't actually have access to that. So we have to be able to invest. But the idea is to manage the deficit. We will have a deficit, but we have to make sure the deficit does not get too high. So the longer the line downwards, the worse off you are. But it's a question of management. So you can see as a government, we have had a policy of reducing our deficit. So we are down here, we had another one cycle here, we have to spend more money, we are going down again, next cycle Winston came. For Winston, just for the school rebuild, we're spending $180 million. Not schools that will be gone. Most of the schools that we are rebuilding, 98% of the schools did not even have an architectural plan. I don't know whether the building has one or not. Did not even have an engineer certification. So now if we rebuild the schools, we have to rebuild them better. Otherwise, if it gets blown again, you see what kind of building that we have to do. You are blown away. So we have to make sure that the engineering certificate is there. So this building here, I don't think it's made a lot of sense. If this gets blown away, if we come and rebuild this, we have to make sure the engineering standards are met. So today, all the schools we are rebuilding, we have a blueprint for all those schools. So next time it gets blown away, we can go to the plant, okay, this is exactly what happened, this is the material that was used. So as a result of that, we have to borrow more money. A lot of the Irish crossings are washed away, bridges, roads. 6,000 kilometers of electrical cables went down. All the way to Ra, Ba, Sabua, all the areas, the electrical cables went down. You can put them back up again. Now the problem with that is, when you build something, you put it back up, God forbid you have another assignment, it comes back down again. You put it back up again, another assignment, it goes down again. So we have to plan for the future. Many of the areas we think about thinking underground. I don't know how many of you have recently been to Nandi. Because Nandi got a 4-lane road coming out of Nandi Airport. We go away to Namaka, Masita. One of the things we have done is that we have taken all electrical cables, telephone cables, and put it underground. Next time there's a cyclone, nothing is there to get blown down. The other thing that we have done over there, in Fiji, the practice has been, from the colonial times, whenever you have a road, the water pipe is put underneath the road. One of the cables, if they want to put it on the ground, they put it underneath the road. When the water pipe is underneath the road, there's a water leakage, the ground gets soft, the road becomes soft, the big trucks come along, you have a lot of problems. Oh, this road is not good. But in fact, because the water pipe is there. So eventually when they discover that there's a leak, they dig up the road, fix up the water pipe, they fix up the water pipe, and they don't fix up the road. So it's a big problem. So in Nandi, you want the 4-lane, take out the pipes and put it on the side of the road. You take out the electrical cables, on top, put it on the side of the road. The next time there's a problem with the water pipe, you don't dig up the road to fix up the water pipe. You just dig up the side and fix up the water pipe. A lot of the pipes, electrical cables we have today, like in Suva and other places, like 40, 50, 60 years old. We've had governments in the past not having a regular maintenance program. It's like you build your house, every 2, 3 years or 4 years you have to repaint it. You have to look after it. Otherwise you crumble. In the same way, you you have to always set aside money to look after your things. Like you buy a car, I have to set aside time to polish my car in 2 to 3 months or whatever it may be. If I don't clean, it will become rusty and then it goes me a bigger cost. So that's how we get governments. That's what we're doing. The government now is planning to ensure that we regularly look after our assets that cost money. Government also has to make money. Right? We have the revenue we collect. People go and pay the license, people have fines, people pay taxes. Government revenue here in 2004 was $1.1 billion. Today we collect $3.1 billion. So our revenue has increased. When our revenue increases, that means we have to borrow less. So there are a lot of people who are obviously absorbing from the system. A lot of business people, they don't pay the taxes. We are going after them, getting them to pay taxes. There are other ways they're trying to gain revenue. But still a lot of people stealing from the system. They bring in $10 million worth of goods. At the border, they have to pay the duty. They say, no, it's only about $2 million. They try to get away with it. So they pay less money, we collect less money. We have less money, we have less money to spend on the people to carry out the government. What are the things that helps us generate revenue? VAT obviously goes towards revenue. Direct taxes, this is company tax, personal income tax, customs is what I'm talking about. A lot more work can be done here. Service turnover tax, water resources. These are the areas that contribute towards us collecting $3.1 billion. Now, what we've done, we put together social protection, access to justice, education, health, infrastructure development. These are the areas in which we spend money. These are what we call social areas. So we put that together to show you how much money is being spent in these areas. So you put all these areas together. In 2004, we spent $1.3 billion. Today we are spending $3.6 billion. What is social protection? This is for people who live below poverty line, abandoned children, who live with grandparents. We have single mothers, disabled people. We now, of course, give pension to people who are more than 70 years old to start off. So, because we recognize that there are a lot of people who don't have FFPA. Somebody who's living in a village, a fisherman, or is a farmer, they never have worked for anybody, so they don't have FFPA. And a lot of these elderly people now are being abandoned by the children, they don't necessarily look after them, or give them enough money. So we started off with a very small amount about 3 years ago. We said anybody over the age of 70 will give you $30 a month. Today, we now, anybody over the age of 66, we give them $50. So we increased the amount from 30 to 50, and we reduced the age. So that's social protection. We also, for example, give money to rural pregnant women. We give them a food voucher. So these women in the rural areas in particular, we want them to eat well when they are pregnant. If they don't have good food, when they give birth, the baby is weak. It puts a lot of burden both on the mother, causes psychological and emotional stress, but also puts stress on their health system. If the baby is healthy, they don't have to go to the hospital too many times. Breastfeed them, they stop them, they're fine. If they're sick, it causes a lot of problems for everybody. We also give money, of course, to disabled people and other people below poverty line. That's in there. Access to justice is legal aid office. We now have a legal aid office in Colorado. Now we have legal aid offices throughout Fiji, even in places like Namualu, Kabuni, Kalabu, Rotuma, Leruka, every single place is legal aid. So the thinking behind that, just because you are poor, does not mean you should not have legal representation. There are a lot of women who have been abandoned by their spouses, want claim maintenance, all those things you draft legal aid yourself before that. Just because you may not get that rich, you still should be able to write a will. You want to write a will, that after I die, I want my house to go, or my tractor to go to somebody, they'll help you write a will. Some people die without making a will. When the guy without making a will is called intestate. So they'll also help the family to solve all those issues. That's what legal aid does. Education. We've now made education free. Every single child that comes to the school no longer has to pay a fee. Right from kindergarten all the way my parents were forced to send me to school. There were 5 or 6 of us. We said, when you can't, maybe only the elder one went to school. Or generally the women had to stay back, the girls. You just say, oh, these girls will get married in any case, the husband will look after them. You don't need to send them to school. So that's what we said. And also, of course, we've had so many people say to me, you know, I used to do really well in high school. I used to come first, or fourth, or fifth, first, second. But I did not go to university because my parents couldn't afford to send me to university. So I became a mechanic or whatever I did. So education, of course, the funding has increased by significantly there, and I'll show you later on. Health has been increased funding, but our major issue with health, as you were seeing in today's papers, is not the building of hospitals, etc., but we don't have enough doctors. We don't have enough doctors, we don't have enough specialists. Now, just because somebody's done a medical degree and become a doctor, it doesn't mean they can do everything. They can't cut you open and do a heart surgery. To become a heart surgeon, it takes about 10 or 15 years after you become one. So unfortunately, we have over the past number of decades, 30, 40 years, not invested in our doctors. The salaries have been very low. So last year in the budget, we gave doctors up to 80% pay rise, so they can stay within the public health system, in the public hospitals. And now anybody that becomes a doctor in the government, they graduate to become a doctor, if they want to do any postgraduate studies, specialist studies at the Teaching School of Medicine, we pay for them for free. We pay the fees. Please go and become a specialist. To become more specialized, you need to be better through the public health system. So our main challenge for hospitals is actually the number of doctors we have. There's not enough graduates. We have the money to pay for it, but there's not enough doctors coming. So we've got Minister Akbar and her team going in 2 weeks, next week actually, going off to India to get some more specialists. We don't have an ear, nose and throat specialist. We don't have a speech therapist, not enough gynecologists. You know, sometimes you have only one person who knows about kidneys in the entire country. Somebody from Mombasa has to come all the way to Suba. So these are the kind of issues we need to resolve. It will take some time, but in the meantime, we have to hire people from overseas to fill in that gap. The other issue with health is, you know, people talk about medicine, it's not enough medicine. The issue about medicine is not that there is not enough medicine, or we don't have the money to buy it, it's a logistics thing. So, for example, if you have an outbreak of diarrhea over here, all of you go off to the health center here to get the diarrhea tablets. Now, because everybody is going there, the stock will come down. But it doesn't mean there's not enough diarrhea tablets in Missouri. Or there's none down the road in another health center. They just don't, civil servants don't actually do what they call the logistics of it. They should be able to know, okay, the diarrhea tablets in Colorado is going down, we need to move some of the medicine from Missouri. The very simple things like that. Recently I was in India, and the Indian government has offered us a software. See the computer? We went to one state called Rajasthan. There's about 17 million people. We went to the warehouse where they keep all the medicine. And the click of a button, they were able to know exactly how much, for example, Panadol is in each health center, each hospital. Real time. Once somebody is given out like a Panadol, the automatically shows up, okay, Panadol is going on as Panadol is there. So they monitor it every day. So they say, okay, the stock of the heat is coming down, we've got plenty of the medicine here, move that from there to here. This is logistics. That's what we do. We're getting that from them. They're actually giving to us for free. We hopefully will have it installed in the next 6 months. Infrastructure development, I've spoken about that. This is about roads, bridges, jetties, electricity. As you know, for example, electricity was not connected all the way around Vitilevu. You're connecting electricity all the way around Vitilevu, connecting more homes. Before you know, you have to give a 10% deposit. You want some homes connected, you have to pay 10% deposit. We found a lot of places, for example, all these people had a home, wanted electricity connected. They have to give the connection. Maybe this half gave the deposit, the other half did not. The government took their money, the other half did not get it, so nobody is connected. So now, 2 budgets ago, we returned everybody's money, He said, no need to do the deposit, we'll connect in any case. Of course, there's a long list of people that has to be connected. We also give those people who earn less than $30,000 a year, government actually the electricity. So the unit cost of electricity now is 34 cents per electricity. So before the thinking was this. Okay, we want to keep the electricity cost down, so they had it about 24 cents a unit. Everybody paid 24 cents, whether you're rich or poor. So if somebody has 10 air conditioners in his house, one swimming pool, they still pay 24 cents, and the person who had only one fridge, maybe one TV and 5 lights still pay 24 cents. That's not fair. So now the real rate is 34 cents. That's how much money FAA used to make. FAA used to make money too. The FAA has got one big dam there to look after. They've got all the little things to look after. So you say, yes, you pay 34 cents. The rich guy pays 34 cents. The person who earns less than $30,000 a year or has prepaid, you earn less than $30,000 a year, 17 cents prepaid for you. So our system is targeted. The poor guy we help, or low income, the rich person you go and look for it. You get the money yourself, but you're doing enough money. So that's what we call progressive taxation. That's how it works. Next, please. Now, this is very important. It's what we call the expenditure mix. See, there are two types of expenditures we have in our lives, everybody, even government. And that is, like in your house, you need money to do your day-to-day living. You buy your food, you pay for electricity, the day-to-day living. You buy your cooking oil, you buy your deodorant, you buy your hair gel, whatever it is. It's your day-to-day. The other expense is the money that you spend to maybe do an additional bedroom to your house. You do a fence, or you buy a car, that's your asset. Now, for any government, we also have that. So that we have come here, all the civil servants who are sitting here, these people from FERCA, all their money, their day-to-day expenses, their salaries, the fuel. We went to Rotorua the other day, the hotel you stayed at, that's what you call your operating expenses, the day-to-day running. The photocopy paper we buy, the toilet paper they use, all of that is day-to-day running. But the other expenditure is your capital expenditure, which is the money that you use to build things. Build a road, build a hospital, fix up a school. That's what we call the capital expenditure. Now, for any government that borrows money to build, that borrows money to run a government, it's always better to spend more money to build things. Because when you build things, it lasts. It's like the example I've been using to the high school students. Assuming if all of us decide to go and have a big party at McDonald's, and we don't have enough money. So we go to the ANZ Bank and say, please lend us some money, we have a big party here in Bororo. Right? So we have the party, we eat the burgers, we eat the food, we eat the drinks. In the morning we wake up, the food is gone, the drinks is gone, it's all here or gone somewhere else. But the debt is still there. The debt is still there. And if we go to ANZ and say we all want to build a new building, you wake up in the morning, the building is there. After a while, the debt will finish, but the building will still be there. So it's going to go better utilization of the funds. So, by comparison, in 2004, 83% of the money that government had was spent on day-to-day expenses. Only 17% was spent on capital, building fees. Today, 60% is spent on operating, but 40% is spent on your capital expenditure, building fees. So you can see 83 versus 60, 17 versus 40, which is a good place to be. Next, please. Again, as I showed you the funding for roads and bridges, that's gone up. These are the PWD days. They had only $55 million. Today you get about $527 million going to roads, bridges, jetties. A lot of the bridges, unfortunately, they were built about 20 years ago, are now failing. You go to Suva, you know the Batonga Bridge. You see the Stisson Parade Bridge. They were built in the 1970s or so. Why are they failing? The bridges are built, it's supposed to last for up to 90 years, 50, 90 years. You go to the western side of CSR bridges. They built, they're still bridges are still around. The bridges have been built in the 70s and 80s, they're falling. Why? Because of corruption, they pour less concrete, put less steel, something got a bigger deal on the side. These are the kind of things. So we're paying the price for it now. You will spend more money. Water and energy, as I mentioned to you, we have the rural electrification program, we have the subsidized electricity, we also have the free water scheme. If there's water authority, Fiji, pilot near you, the water articulated system. If you have less than $30,000, you need $9,000 to use the free water to you, but there's a lot of places that still needs water. We need to get all the people connected. This is why the $337 million here, a lot of that is going to water. Education, like I said, we made education free over here. And that's where you can see the huge spike has gone up. It's $598 million we give to education. We expect this line to go even more higher, at least for the next 2 years. There's more and more students are now coming into university. So most students that now go to university, we actually pay for their fees. All the teachers' salaries are being paid by government. When you go to school, you don't, they go to private. Every other single school in Fiji will pay the fees and the teachers' salaries. Go to university now, we pay for through TELS or the topics. Health, like I said, you can see this is the change in the budget. It's gone up to $244 million. But the main issue for health is the recruitment of doctors and specialists. That's our major challenge. We have to get people from overseas. We don't churn out enough doctors in Fiji too. Fiji School of Medicine, and the Umar and Prasad School of Medicine at the University of Fiji does not have enough graduates. They produce more graduates, we can take them all. Of course, we want to take the best ones, not the ones who haven't been doing that well. Now, this is what I mentioned earlier on. You see this blue line from there all the way down. That's how much money we make as a government revenue, operating revenue. That's how much we spend for operating expenditure, and that's our savings, operating savings. This green part, you can see how the green part has been increasing. So the more savings we have, we use more money to spend and capital expenditure, so we don't have to borrow as much money. Government debt. This is very important. A lot of people talk about government debt without necessarily understanding what government debt is all about. These bars here, they are what you call the actual amount of money that's borrowed, nominal sum. This bar here is what you call your debt to GDP ratio. This line here is more important than this one here. I'll tell you how and why. Assuming that our total output, what you call GDP, some people may say, well, but GDP, gross domestic product, is say $100. Say it's $100. And then we go out and borrow $20. So then we say the debt to GDP ratio is 20%. So we borrow 20% of what our gross domestic product. But assuming our gross domestic product goes up to $500. Instead of $100, it becomes wealthier, our productive capacity goes up to $500. But instead of borrowing $20, we go and borrow $50. Instead of borrowing $20, we borrow $50. What is the percentage? 50 or 500 is 10%. So even though we have borrowed more money as a percentage of our GDP, it's less than if we borrow $50 and $100. So that's why I'm saying that red line is more important. It's how you manage that debt. So you can see we have a policy here of reducing our debt to GDP ratio and it's coming down, which is a good thing. But it's gone up here. Why? This is because of Winston. Winston, we had to go out and borrow more than $200 million to rebuild the schools, the jetties, the Health for Homes initiative. I don't know how many of you know about that. I'm sure they're not in the Thailand area. We have given $125 million in the Health for Homes initiative to help people rebuild their individual homes. That's a lot of money. It's never been done before. But we felt we had to do it because the devastation caused by this was so enormous. Of course, we can't keep on doing it all the time. Every year we have a cycle like that that really pushes you into a very tough situation. This time we said we have to do it. A lot of people have never used the card before. For them also it was the introduction of new technology. You know, they went to the hardware store, use the card for the first time, the big number and all that. It also helps educate people too. So this is the very important line. Just show you, see our debt to GDP ratio is 46.3 and 48.6 Afghanistan. Let's look at some other countries. What's the debt to GDP ratio? Japan is 239.2%. In other words, they borrowed 239% more than what the actual value of their wealth is for GDP. USA is 107.4. Very big country. And they were spending, they're borrowing a lot of money. But by comparison, let's look at other smaller countries. Maldives is similar to us. They have a debt to GDP ratio of 81.5%. Seychelles, which is another small country in the Indian Ocean, 68.6. Nauru, 65. Mauritius, everybody talks about Mauritius. And they compare us to Mauritius. Mauritius is very similar to us. They have a population of about 1.2 million people. Sugar was a major contributor to the economy like ours. Unlike Fiji, they don't have any rivers. They have a big water problem, so they built huge dams to store water. Now, Mauritius decided a few years ago, like what we're doing now, to make a lot of investment in the infrastructure. To build 4-lane highways everywhere, taxis, everything, put up ITC centers. Why? Because they, as a strategy, they thought we are very close to Africa, close to Africa. Very close to Africa. Africa is sometimes very unstable. So we will offer services from Mauritius to Africans and African companies or international companies that want to go in Africa. They can be based here, service Africa from here, and it's really paying off. You know, the ITC services. A lot of rich Africans, South Africans are buying property here. But you know, they've now restricted foreigners from owning land in Fiji. They have even stringent rules. If you're a foreigner, you can't even buy any land. You can only lease land, but you can't even buy properties. So if you want to buy a property, you just buy an apartment. A lot of these foreigners are coming to buy an apartment. They like Mauritius, stable, the road order is good, and they have a lot of good infrastructure. So these people went out and spent a lot of money. That's why they have GDP ratio 62.7. But because if you spend money in the right place, it will pay off. It will pay off. So that's what they've done. Tuvalu 53.7, 2.6, we're sitting here, 46.3. Australia is 41.1. These are the countries less than us, and you can see. It's surprising that Australia is 41.1 because Australia was very rich in minerals. But despite that, their debt to GDP ratio is nearly the same as ours. Not that far away. And these are the other countries. Papua New Guinea is 33.5, but they have some real issues with foreign exchange. And that's something we talk about later. So, the next slide please. So ladies and gentlemen, in summary, we expect the economy to grow at about 3.6%, which is a good place to be. There's a lot of growth prospects in the medium term, the next few years. A lot of private sector investment. A lot of people in the private businesses are investing quite a lot. You see a lot of warehouses, a lot of factories being built, a lot of extensions to homes, a lot of extensions to our shops. We are being very mabangi, very stingy where we need to be, very kanjus where we have to be. But when we are mabangi in certain areas, there are other areas we are very generous in because we need to target that. And that's the only way to run it. We have to run government finances like it is your own. It's not like anybody else's money. It's the taxpayers' money. So our approach is that we have to be very strict about things. We have high capital expenditure, as I mentioned, we spend a lot more money in building things as opposed to operating the day-to-day affairs of government. Broad-based road. You just go back to the slide. You see, one of the things that we have to ensure, I say these are the areas that contribute to the economy. For government, our policy is we don't believe we should only depend on one or two sectors to contribute to growth. We should not only depend, for example, on tourism and sugar. There are other areas that we should contribute. Just look at it this way. Assuming, and we were very lucky with Winston did not damage many of the hotels. Assuming it had, assuming Winston came, originally they were saying Winston was going to come to, from Malabo, not that way, come across to Romani, hit Suva, Nasiru, Zasori, and then go to Vitpilevu, hit Nandi. Assuming they had done that, imagine what would have happened. Tourism numbers would have completely plummeted. Our foreign reserves would have come down. So when you depend on only one or two sectors, you are a higher risk. See, one of the issues we have in tourism at the moment is this. 51% of all the tourists that come to Fiji come from Australia. Maybe 17% of all the tourists that come to Fiji come from New Zealand. So those two countries combined contribute nearly 70% towards our tourism on Earth. And 15% from North America and Belgium share that as well. Imagine if the economy in Australia and New Zealand does not do that, what will happen? That means the less Australians and Kiwis will travel to Fiji, the hit us really hard. So what are we doing? We say we want more Indians, we want more Chinese, we want more Europeans to come as tourists to Fiji. Spend their money. So if we have maybe 20% from Australia, 20% from New Zealand, 20% from India, 20% from China, 20% from other places, if one country goes down, you still have the other 80% without us. It's in the same way. If everybody over here lives in one house, and all of you can earn money, but only these two ladies work and the others only stay home. If these two ladies get sick, all of you will suffer. But if everybody works, and even if three of you get sick, you can live off the others. So we won't mitigate the risk. So that's why we are, for example, partnering with Fiji Airways. We're giving them an $18 million marketing budget. They're flying to Singapore. Why are we flying to Singapore? Because it means a lot more people can come through the country. Today, Fiji Airways today flies to San Francisco, it flies to LA, it flies to Hong Kong, it flies to Singapore. All these countries we are connected to. So it makes it easier for people to get to Fiji. They say, oh, let's go to Fiji. It's a direct flight from LA, direct flight from Hong Kong, direct flight from Singapore. In 4 or 5 years' time, the Indian tourism market will be the largest outbound market. In other words, they will be the largest travelers outside any country in the world. Even if we got 1% of them just coming for holiday. Of course, it increases our chances of getting more revenue. So, let's go back to the last slide, please. So, we have the foreign reserves, that I mentioned, is all-time high. And inflation, which is the price of goods, is set to stabilize and fall below 3% in the medium term. So as I mentioned, ladies and gentlemen, after this you may get some ideas. You can send us any ideas to this email address. If you have any suggestions you want to make, if you have any issues, you can email it to that address. Or if you want to post it to us, you can post it to that address. But please make sure it gets to us by next Friday. Not this coming Friday. Oh yeah, by 19th of May, please, is the date. Or if you're visiting Suva, you can drop it off at that building. So we'll leave the slide up there for you.